Vigilante Williamson here with a very simple question. That is, how good will the Kansas City Chiefs be in 2025? That is a good question. I am predicting at least somewhat of a fall off. My TLDR, I'm going to go with 11 wins. I could go with 12, but I'm going to go with 11. I'm going to go with 11 wins. I'm going to go with a wild card spot. Now, they may still have a good playoff run. Hell, they're still a team that's capable of winning a championship. They're only the Super Bowl runner-ups, but they're mortal too. We saw Tom Brady and the Patriots, even in his dominant run, lose some Super Bowls, they usually make the playoffs. I don't think he missed the playoffs too often, but sometimes have that Super Bowl lull, sometimes be a little bit worse the next season. Sometimes you can come back and make another Super Bowl run. It wouldn't shock me if they did. I just feel like too much of the league, too many teams are getting better, especially in this division, the AFC West, which I think is the best division in football, even including my own, or one of my own, I guess. I'm a double homer for the Lions and the Texans, but even with the North, as good as it is, I don't think it's as good as top to bottom as the AFC West. I think it is going to be the premier division this year. That's not always the case with wins. I mean, NFC West, I think, is actually also going to be tough. And I thought they were tough last year, but didn't get a ton of wins. I am predicting a lot of wins for the AFC West. I already said 13 for the Chargers. I'm picking 11 for the Chiefs. And I think 11 or 12 for the Broncos. I can say 11 and 12 for the Chiefs. I can see them being the second. I can see them still winning this division. But I'm going with 11. I'm predicting them not to win the division. I'm predicting them to have a little bit of a low. And I'm predicting them to fall back to earth a little bit. One of the reasons is Patrick Mahomes. Well, to be honest, it's not. Technically, Patrick Mahomes had a solid season. I know I made a video early in the season because he got off to a rough start. But he ended up with nearly 4,000 yards, 26 touchdowns, 11 picks, 67% as far as completion percentage. Missed a game because they held him out the last game of the year, and so maybe that could have affected his stats. But technically, this is his worst statistics as a starter as far as yardage, and tied for the same with touchdowns. And in the other year where he had 26 touchdowns, he only had 5 picks, so he had more picks. So you could look at last year as a down year. Still a good year, still a really good year. I mean, he turned it around from that video, but it is down for him. And one of those reasons is I don't think he has the weapons around him offensively that he used to when he first came in as a starter, especially that first year in 2018. He put up those astronomical numbers as a starter, as a first-year starter. 50 touchdowns, 5,000 yards. We had never seen anything like this. But there's a lot of things at stake then. He had better receivers around him. He had Cheetah. And that was the tail end of the super quarterback era. Don't get me wrong, we're still in the offensive era. There's so many great receivers and so much talent around the league. But there was an era where there was a lot of guys going over 4,500 yards and over 30 and 40 touchdowns. And while that still can happen, it still happened last year. It's not like it doesn't happen. It doesn't quite happen to the same clip that it was between the years of maybe 2012 to 2018, 2019. It just seemed like everything was for the offense, especially the way they were enforcing the rules. They were not letting the corners get enough physicality as they do now. I think they've kind of loosened that, and as a result, these numbers aren't quite as high, not just for Patrick Mahomes, but across the board. If you look, it feels like there was less 4,000-yard passers than we had in previous years. Even though we did still have some guys put up some good numbers. I mean, Burrow almost put up 5,000 and like 40-some-odd touchdowns. So it's not like there's not still astronomical numbers. And we're seeing a return of the running game, which is, in general, taking a lot of attempts away from the passer. And I think Patrick Mahomes, even his team, is no different. I mean, they don't have quite the running game they would have had, especially his first year as a starter. But Kareem Hunt is a solid running back still. I mean, Isaiah Pacheco, not quite what you want him to be. But Kareem Hunt, who's back, who once was a Kansas City Chief and also had his share of off-the-field things happen. When he first was with Kansas City, he was good for 1,300 yards, even 1,000+ yards from scrimmage the second year. So he was still a solid running back for Patrick Mahomes' 2018 year. And he's still giving you decent production. Not quite 1,000 yards from scrimmage. But that's another thing. It's just like there's just not as much offensive talent. Even though, technically, for what it's worth, Travis Kelce is still there. And he is still a top 10 tight end. 823 yards, 3 touchdowns. 800 yards is good for being one of the better tight ends as far as yardage in the league. Now, he does have a lot of receptions, and his, yards per reception isn't great, to be honest. But he's still the 5th best tight end as far as yards. He is the 3rd best tight end as far as receptions. Not that great with average, maybe one of the worst that qualifies. He's the 2nd worst that qualifies. Shout out to David Njoku for Cleveland. And doesn't have a ton of touchdowns, not quite as prolific as he used to be. Like I said, only 3. But he's still a good tight end. He's still there, but there's no explosive player on this offense as far as the skill positions. I mean, he's a Xavier Worthy. Is he ever going to be what you want him to be? I don't know. I know he's only had, 1 year. And in many ways, he is that explosive playmaker that Kansas City needs to, finally replace Tyreek Hill. But similar to another Kansas City tradition, and really an NFL tradition, had a lot of off the field issues with his girlfriend. It may have been a situation where she was exploiting him and made a situation out to be something that it wasn't, because he did file charges against her and say that she assaulted him. If I remember, it was like an assault case, and it may have been a fake thing, but it is an off the field distraction. Kansas City had a lot of that. I mentioned Kareem Hunt. He left Kansas City basically because of the situation he had back in the day. I think it was like a domestic dispute. So even though this may have not been, and you might say it doesn't have anything to do with the NFL, it doesn't have anything to do with football. Well, it's a human being, right? So I don't know. Maybe, listen, if he can focus past this, a lot of people want Xavier Worthy to take a big step this year and be a good wide receiver and be the explosive thing that Kansas City needs to take the top off the defense. But if this is a big distraction and this is a situation, sometimes it's just hard to do that. So that's why I'm bringing it up, because as a result, we don't have a lot of talent on Kansas City's offense. They did draft the offensive lineman, which helps that, situation. You can argue offensive line has always been an issue, even when they are winning championships. But even he's a risk. He's a guy who had an injury at Ohio State, and a lot of people passed on him. He went late to Kansas City, and he might be great, but he had an injury issue, so you don't know how that's going to be. And all that said, I'm talking all this stuff about the offense. The truth is, this is a defensive team now. So with all that said, they have the 4th ranked defense scoring-wise, 9th as far as yards, upper high as far as getting turnovers, upper mid, I guess, as far as getting turnovers, 14. I like turnovers, 12 picks, 13 picks as a defense, number 12 in getting picks. They were also, as far as passing yards, 18, but number 8 in rushing yards, which that's always going to be important. And you still have some talented players on that defense. Obviously, Chris Jones is kind of the player, the premier player of this defense. He only had 5 sacks last year. I'm not sure about his advanced stats as far as hurries and all that. And to be honest, he is a D tackle, so you're not expecting him to get a ton of sacks. Who actually led their team in sacks was George Karlaftis, believe it or not. Chris Jones was 3rd with 5, but Karlaftis, I would have never guessed he was the leader in sacks. This is still a solid defense. They still got a solid defensive front, and so they're solid against the run. They're above average against the run. And Chris Jones is a tackle that changes the game. And even if he doesn't get a lot of sacks, he's going to need so many double teams. It allows, people to get free to where a guy like Karlaftis, who's not the most lauded DN, even though he's a solid player, and he didn't even start every game last year. He can get 8 sacks. And so as long as Chris Jones is there, this defense is always going to be a factor. And they're a good defense. No matter what we say about this offense, it may not be what it once was. It's still solid. I mean, it's a middle-of-the-pack offense, points-wise and yards-wise. And there was that ominous stat that I kind of called to and blamed a lot on the refs. And you can argue whether that should or shouldn't be. They only scored 30 points twice last year. They never scored over 30 in the regular season. And most of the teams that had that statistic be true about them didn't make the playoffs. In fact, every other team outside of Kansas City didn't make the playoffs. So for a team to have not been as explosive or has been as unexplosive as they were, it's kind of a shock that they were able to win as many games as they did. They won 15 games. They're not going to win 15 games this year. Even if they do win this division, even if they are a little bit better than I think, they're not going to win 15 games. And the elephant in the room is the refs. No matter what you think, there is an agenda, especially now when NFL and ESPN are now technically, linked together. It looks like the NFL has an ownership stake in ESPN, some narrative and gambling, and that's the gambling situation with ESPN, believe it or not. NFL owns gambling or part of a company's gambling operation, however you want to word it. So in that era, it is something to wonder about the Kansas City Chiefs and, how they win. Even them losing to Philadelphia, you can wonder. I mean, obviously it was a dominant performance by the Philadelphia Eagles, but if you want to go really conspiracy theory, I mean, how many people put money on the Chiefs because of all the shady things happening with the refs and some of the calls they've gotten last year? That's the big elephant in the room. I brought up that blonde singer from wherever. Is she from the Midwest? She from the South? I know she was Jeff Jarrett's babysitter, believe it or not. With all that talk, let's go to the schedule. We always got to go to the schedule because that's a good way of really seeing, are they good? Are they good enough to do what I think? So I said 11 wins, and I'm going to be justified because I talked about how bad the Chargers schedule is. This schedule is just as tough. Speaking of the Chargers, week 1, they go with the Chargers. Week 2, Super Bowl all over again. Got to go against the Eagles. Week 3, they get a respite against the Giants. But then it's back to the grind against Baltimore. Then you get another respite with Jacksonville. Then it's back to the grind with us in Detroit. Then Las Vegas, which I think is going to be a much tougher team. And, could have beat them last year. Absolutely could beat them this year. You know what I'm saying? I guess technically, didn't they beat them like the last game? That was the Broncos that beat them the last game. So, yeah, that was a big deal. How can I forget that? Where the Broncos, could have missed the playoffs if Kansas City would have played this play. And I remember that being a big deal for the Bengals fans. So how can I forget that? But, yeah, going back to last year, they won a game against the Raiders 27-20. And another game 19-17. So they absolutely could lose to the Raiders. And I think the Raiders are going to be much better than they were this year. And I think Kansas City is going to be a little worse. So do not look at the Raiders as a respite. They got the Giants in Jacksonville, but the Raiders is a real game they're going to have to deal with. Same with the Commanders, obviously, Buffalo. Then they get that perfect bye right in the middle. Then you still back to that grind. Denver is going to be tough. I think Indy's going to be improved. Dallas might be a respite, but Dallas might, with all the stuff they got going on with Micah Parsons, they still got George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb. And whatever you say about Dak Prescott, I know he's a hospital ball walking out the front door, but he's a good regular season player. It just is what it is. He's a statistically good regular season player when he's healthy most of the time. And now he's got 2 receivers. And if they can't fix this Micah Parsons thing, because a lot of times, we saw with Myles Garrett, I want to trade until you throw the bag at him. Dallas is not going to be a walkover. I think they're going to be closer to the 500 team, maybe below, but they're still going to give you tough, especially if healthy. It'll be a tough game. You know how I feel about Houston. I think Houston's going to the Super Bowl. I think they got the best defense in the league. They played them tough already last year in the playoffs. Houston can try to get their revenge for that playoff loss in Week 14. Then you got the Chargers, San Diego Superchargers. All right, I know the LA Chargers, but still I like that song. That's Week 15, late after they're the first game of the year, and then they're pretty late. You got Tennessee. I think Tennessee is not going to be the easiest out, but you should be better than them. Then Denver, then Vegas to end the year. So this is still a tough schedule. I'm standing by my 11 wins. It's some games they can win, and for better or worse, Kansas City does tend to win a lot of their close games with good teams. But they got a couple of outs. Yeah, you get Giants, Jacksonville, Tennessee, but even Tennessee is not going to be tough. Hell, even the Giants are going to be a tough defense. So I mean, there's really no gimmies. And what if I'm wrong about Jacksonville? You know what I'm saying? Because I can be wrong. Jacksonville has a path to me being wrong just because of BTJ and Travis Hunter. Those receivers are good enough. They're going to be a problem, even with Sunshine at quarterback. So this is no easy schedule. I feel good about 11 wins because they're going to beat a lot of these teams, but they're going to lose to some of these teams too. 11 wins is what I'm going to go with the Kansas City Chiefs. But what do you think? Do you think they're going to be a better team than I do? Am I too hard on Patrick Mahomes? Pause. What do you think? Do you think this team's good enough to win it all still? Do you think 11 is too low? Do you think they're still going to win the division? You put your thoughts in the comments. And if you like the video, please like the video. If you're so obliged, share and subscribe. Please do that. Even if you do none of these things, thank you for watching. Thank you for your time. Good night. God bless. Peace.